When Jack and his family moved into their new home in a quiet suburban neighborhood, they thought they had found paradise. The house was spacious, the backyard was perfect for summer barbecues, and best of all, it had a large, sparkling pool. For Jack, the pool was more than just a luxury. It was a place where his kids could laugh and play, where he and his wife could unwind after long days, and where they could create memories with family and friends. It was their little slice of happiness. Everything seemed perfect at first. The neighbors were friendly enough, and the community appeared welcoming. But it didn't take long for Jack to realize that there was one person who was not thrilled with their arrival: Karen. She lived directly across the street and had somehow appointed herself as the unofficial ruler of the Homeowners Association, HOA. Karen was the kind of person who treated the neighborhood rules as if they were the law. If your grass was even an inch too tall, you'd get a notice. If your garbage cans were left out a little too long, you could expect a passive-aggressive email. But nothing seemed to bother Karen more than Jack's pool. At first, her disapproval was subtle. She would give the pool a disapproving glare whenever she walked by, clutching her tiny dog in one arm and a clipboard in the other. Jack found it amusing. After all, what kind of person hates a pool? But Karen's glares soon turned into action. Within a week of moving in, Jack received his first official HOA notice. According to the letter, his pool violated community standards for visual aesthetics. The problem? It was too loud and distracting. Jack laughed it off, assuming it was just a misunderstanding. After all, the pool was clean, well maintained, and surrounded by a neatly trimmed lawn. What could possibly be wrong with that? But Karen wasn't joking. More letters followed. Complaints about the noise level when his kids splashed around, objections to the inflatable pool toys, warnings about the number of guests they had over during their weekend pool parties. The final straw came when Jack found a handwritten note taped to his front door after his daughter's birthday party. In large, angry letters, it read, "Your pool is a nuisance. Fix it, or else." At first, Jack tried to reason with Karen. He reduced the noise by limiting pool use during the evening hours. He replaced the colorful inflatables with more neutral designs. He even made sure the pool area was spotless at all times. But no matter how much he tried to accommodate, it was never enough. Karen wanted the pool gone. For Jack, that wasn't an option. The pool was the heart of their home, a place where his family found joy. But if there was one thing Jack didn't like, it was being bullied, and Karen's relentless harassment felt like exactly that. If she wanted a fight, she was going to get one. And so, an idea began to form in his mind. If Karen thought his pool was too much of a problem, he'd show her what a real problem looked like. Jack wasn't just going to keep the pool, he was going to turn it into the ultimate backyard water park. Over the next few weeks, Jack threw himself into his plan. He scoured the internet for the best pool upgrades and hired a local contractor to help bring his vision to life. He didn't hold back. First, he installed a massive water slide that twisted and turned before plunging into the deep end of the pool. Then came the splash zone, an area with water cannons and mini fountains where his kids could play for hours. To top it all off, he added an inflatable obstacle course that floated on the water, perfect for poolside competitions. But Jack wasn't done. He installed LED pool lights that changed colors at night, creating a dazzling display that could be seen from Karen's window. He even built a small poolside cabana, complete with a sound system that played cheerful music during the day. The transformation was nothing short of spectacular. What had once been a simple backyard pool was now a full-fledged water park, and Jack couldn't wait to see Karen's reaction. When the work was finally done, Jack invited the entire neighborhood over for a grand opening pool party. Kids shrieked with joy as they raced down the water slide. Parents lounged in the cabana, sipping cold drinks while the music played. It was everything Jack had imagined, and more. And across the street, hidden behind her blinds, Karen watched in horror. The next day, the HOA sent another letter. This one wasn't just a warning, it was an official demand. According to Karen, the water park violated at least a dozen HOA regulations. She claimed it was disruptive, dangerous, and unacceptable. Jack read the letter, smiled, and tossed it aside. What Karen didn't realize was that Jack had done his homework. He had reviewed every HOA rule and regulation before starting the project, making sure he was in full compliance. The water slide within the height limit, the music kept under the neighborhood's noise ordinance, the pool area regularly cleaned and maintained. Karen could complain all she wanted. Legally, there was nothing she could do, but Karen wasn't one to give up easily. Over the next few weeks, she launched a full-on campaign against Jack's water park. She bombarded the HOA board with emails, circulated petitions, and even tried to get the local news involved. But despite her best efforts, the rest of the neighborhood loved the water park. Parents were grateful for a safe, fun place where their kids could play. Even some of Karen's old allies on the HOA board started to grow tired of her endless complaints. And Jack, he wasn't going to back down. If Karen wanted a battle, she was in for a long one. What started as a petty feud had turned into something bigger, a reminder that some things like family and fun were worth fighting for. And every time Jack's kids laughed as they splashed in the pool, he knew he had won. Despite Karen's endless attempts to shut down Jack's backyard water park, the neighborhood had taken a liking to his bold move. Kids from every block lined up outside his gate on weekends, eager to dive into the splash zone or race each other down the water slide. Even parents who once politely avoided neighborhood drama began dropping by for poolside barbecues. Jack had become something of a local hero, someone who stood up against the HOA tyranny and, more specifically, against Karen's reign of terror. But Karen wasn't done yet. If anything, the failure of her first wave of complaints only made her more determined to bring Jack's pool empire crashing down. And this time, she wasn't playing fair. It started with the mysterious visits. One day, a city inspector showed up at Jack's door, clipboard in hand, saying he had received an anonymous tip about unauthorized construction. Jack, always one step ahead, handed over the paperwork proving everything had been legally installed. The inspector left without issue, but Jack knew exactly who had called him. Next came the false accusations. Karen began circulating rumors that Jack's pool was a health hazard. She claimed the water wasn't properly treated, that it attracted mosquitoes, and that kids had been injured on the water slide. Jack was furious, but he wasn't about to give Karen the satisfaction of a reaction. Instead, he had the pool professionally inspected and posted the clean bill of health on the neighborhood message board with a simple caption, "For those who are concerned." Karen, of course, didn't take the public humiliation well. The next week, Jack woke up to find his front lawn covered in HOA violation notices. One for excessive noise, another for unsightly pool equipment, and the most ridiculous of all, a notice claiming his inflatable obstacle course was an unapproved structure. Jack laughed to himself. Karen was grasping at straws now, but as much as he enjoyed watching her efforts backfire, he wasn't about to sit back and take it. If Karen wanted to escalate things, he would take it to a whole new level. And so, Jack unveiled his next masterpiece, the poolside movie nights. Using a giant inflatable screen and a high-quality projector, he began hosting weekly outdoor movie nights right by the pool. Families brought blankets, kids splashed in the shallow end, and everyone enjoyed classic blockbusters under the stars. The event became a smash hit. Soon, neighbors were asking if Jack could host birthday parties and even a summer fundraiser for the local school. Karen, on the other hand, was losing her mind. The first movie night, she called the HOA, demanding that Jack shut it down. But since the noise levels were within legal limits and the movie wrapped up by 10 p.m., there was nothing they could do. The following week, she called the police, claiming there was unruly behavior happening. The officers arrived to find nothing more than a bunch of families enjoying the Goonies. They left with a smile and even asked Jack when the next showing would be. But Karen wasn't done yet. In a final act of desperation, she proposed a special HOA meeting with a singular agenda, forcing Jack to dismantle the water park and cease all public disturbances. She spent days canvassing the neighborhood, trying to gather support. What she didn't realize, however, was that most of the community had grown tired of her antics. For years, Karen had bullied everyone into following her rules she had personally twisted to suit her preferences. Jack's defiance had given people the courage to push back. The night of the HOA meeting was tense. Karen, sitting at the head of the table, listed her grievances with the kind of passion usually reserved for courtroom dramas. She painted Jack as a menace to the community, someone who disregarded the rules and disrupted the peaceful atmosphere they had all worked so hard to maintain. When it was Jack's turn to speak, he remained calm. He explained how the pool brought joy not just to his family, but to the entire neighborhood. He talked about the friendships that had formed over cannonball contests and poolside chats. He even presented a petition signed by over 80% of the neighborhood asking to keep the water park exactly as it was. By the time he finished, there was no contest. The HOA board voted against Karen's motion, with only one person supporting her, herself. As the meeting adjourned, Jack caught the slightest hint of defeat on Karen's face. She had lost, and everyone knew it. But Jack wasn't a cruel man. He didn't want to crush Karen. He just wanted her to stop interfering with his family's happiness. So the following week, he did something no one expected. He extended an olive branch. On a bright Saturday afternoon, Jack personally invited Karen to the next movie night. At first, she scoffed, but something in her softened. Maybe it was exhaustion from the battle, or maybe she was simply curious. That evening, as the sun set, Karen arrived. She stood at the edge of the pool, arms folded, as Jack greeted her with a warm smile and handed her a glass of lemonade. For the first time in months, Karen didn't argue. She didn't complain. Instead, she sat quietly and watched the movie, an old romantic comedy from her youth. And as the laughter of children echoed through the night air, something changed. Maybe, just maybe, she realized that life in the neighborhood could be better if she simply let people enjoy themselves. And while Jack would never say they became best friends, from that day forward, the complaints stopped. The water park stayed, and the neighborhood, it was happier than ever. In the end, Jack didn't just win against the HOA Karen, he changed the neighborhood for the better. And every time he sat by the pool, drink in hand, watching his kids splash and play, he knew he had done the right thing. Because sometimes the best way to deal with a Karen isn't to fight fire with fire. It's to drown her in kindness, one splash at a time. Months passed, and Jack's backyard water park became a permanent fixture in the neighborhood. What started as a simple act of defiance against HOA Karen had evolved into the heart of the community. Families who had barely spoken to one another now shared laughs by the pool. Kids who once stayed indoors, glued to their screens, now spent entire afternoons racing down the water slide. Even the grumpiest neighbors found themselves drawn to the sound of carefree joy floating through the air. But while the rest of the community had embraced Jack's poolside paradise, Karen remained a shadow on the outskirts, quiet, watchful, and, as Jack suspected, plotting her next move. Jack wasn't naive. He knew someone as obsessed with control as Karen wouldn't give up so easily. And sure enough, the next phase of her revenge came quietly but deliberately, this time through legal loopholes and bureaucratic red tape. One morning, Jack opened his mail to find a thick envelope from the HOA's legal counsel. Inside was a formal complaint citing obscure and outdated bylaws. No structures exceeding 6 feet in height without prior written approval, and no gatherings exceeding 15 people without express permission. Karen had found technicalities buried in the rule book and was now using them to threaten legal action if Jack didn't dismantle the water park immediately. Jack felt his blood boil. For months, he had played fair. He had followed every code, every inspection, and every reasonable request. But Karen, she was playing dirty. Still, Jack wasn't about to let her win. Not when the entire neighborhood was behind him. Instead of panicking, he did what he did best. He got creative. If Karen wanted to play the legal game, he was going to beat her at it. His first move, he hired a lawyer. Not just any lawyer, but an HOA specialist who had a reputation for dismantling overreaching boards. Within days, Jack had a countersuit prepared, claiming harassment, selective enforcement, and violation of community harmony. His lawyer also discovered a fascinating loophole. Because the water park was technically a temporary recreational installation, it didn't fall under the permanent structure regulations Karen was citing. The paperwork was airtight. If Karen wanted a fight, Jack was ready to take her all the way to court. But Jack wasn't satisfied with simply defending himself. He wanted to turn the tables. So while his lawyer handled the legal side, Jack went back to work on his next time big idea. If Karen wanted to weaponize the HOA against him, he'd give the HOA a reason to reconsider who was really the problem in the community. He began documenting every petty complaint Karen had filed over the years, not just against him, but against everyone. The neighbor whose garden gnome she called unsightly, the elderly couple she fined for leaving their Christmas lights up 2 days past the deadline, the single mom she reported because her teenage son parked his car an inch over the curb. Once he gathered enough evidence, Jack launched the Neighborhood Voices Project. It was a simple website where anyone in the community could anonymously share their experiences with HOA overreach. Within days, the stories poured in. Tales of Karen's bullying, her constant surveillance, and the way she used the HOA rules as her personal weapon. Jack compiled everything into a sleek professional presentation and distributed it to the entire community. The message was clear. The real problem wasn't the water park, it was Karen. The backlash was swift. Neighbors who had been quietly resentful for years now had a platform to push back. An emergency HOA meeting was called, not to discuss Jack's pool, but to address Karen's abuse of power. Jack sat quietly in the back of the community center as neighbor after neighbor took the floor, recounting their frustrations. Even those who had once supported Karen began to distance themselves, and when it was finally time to vote, the result was unanimous. Karen was officially removed from her position on the HOA board. Her reign of terror was over, but Jack's victory didn't stop there. With Karen out of the way, the remaining board members approved his water park as an official community recreational zone. What once had been a source of conflict was now a celebrated neighborhood feature. Jack expanded it further, adding a community garden, a shaded picnic area, and even a small splash pad for toddlers. What started as a petty feud had transformed the neighborhood into a place where people actually wanted to live. And Karen, without her HOA authority, she retreated into the shadows. Gone were the days of constant complaints and surprise inspections. She became just another neighbor, one who, ironically, found herself benefiting from the very community spirit she had tried to destroy. Rumor had it, she even attended one of Jack's movie nights, hiding in the back row with a bucket of popcorn. As for Jack, he didn't just win the battle, he changed the game entirely. The neighborhood was no longer a place of rigid rules and fear. It was a place where people came together. And every time he watched his kids laugh as they splashed through the water, he knew he had done more than just beat Karen. He had built something that would outlast any HOA drama, a community where people truly belonged. And that was the sweetest revenge of all. With Karen officially dethroned and the HOA no longer breathing down his neck, Jack could have easily kicked back and enjoyed his victory. But for him, this wasn't just about winning a petty feud. It was about building something lasting. With the community now firmly on his side, he decided to take things to the next level and turn his backyard water park into the ultimate neighborhood destination. If Karen had thought the water slides were too much, she had no idea what was coming next. Jack started by expanding at the pool itself. He hired a local construction crew to install a massive resort-style pool with a lazy river that wound its way through the backyard. Next, he added a towering double-loop water slide that became the talk of the town. But he didn't stop there. With the help of a few neighbors who were just as excited to stick it to Karen, he set up a fully stocked poolside snack bar, offering everything from hot dogs and burgers to snow cones and fresh lemonade. The water park soon became a community hub. Every weekend, families gathered to relax by the pool, while kids raced down the slides, shrieking with joy. Jack even introduced themed pool days, ranging from pirate adventures for the kids to retro movie nights, where they projected classic films onto a massive screen while people floated in the pool with inflatable loungers. It wasn't just a backyard attraction anymore. It was a symbol of the neighborhood's newfound unity and freedom. And while most of the community had moved on from Karen's reign of terror, Jack knew better than to assume she was gone for good. People like Karen didn't just give up. They waited for their moment. Sure enough, just as summer reached its peak, she made her next move. One evening, as Jack was locking up the snack bar, he noticed something unusual. A drone buzzing just above the pool, its camera aimed squarely at his backyard. At first, he thought it might be a curious neighborhood kid, but when he spotted a second drone hovering near the water slide and a third circling the snack bar, he knew exactly who was behind it. Karen wasn't done. Since she couldn't control the HOA anymore, she was turning to other methods, spying on the park, collecting evidence, and hoping to catch Jack in a violation she could use against him. But if Karen thought drones would intimidate him, she had picked the wrong target. Jack wasn't about to be bullied. Not now. Not ever. The next day, Jack launched Operation Drone Defense. He installed advanced motion sensor cameras around the perimeter of his property to catch any future drone activity. But he didn't stop there. He also set up several drone traps, using signal jamming technology to block any unauthorized drones from recording on his property. And for good measure, he filed a formal complaint with the local authorities, citing privacy invasion and harassment. But Jack wasn't just playing defense. He wanted to turn the tables once again. So he did what he did best. He made it fun. At the next community meeting, Jack introduced the newest addition to the water park, Drone Dunk Days. Once a month, they held a neighborhood competition where anyone could bring in a drone and try to navigate it through a series of water-themed obstacle courses. The grand finale, a prize for the first person to successfully dunk a drone into the pool's center fountain. The event was an instant hit. Families cheered as drones swooped and spun through the air, many splashing into the water to the sound of laughter. And Karen? She tried to send her drones to spy on the event, but they didn't last long against Jack's drone jamming tech and the army of kids eager to dunk any unwanted intruders. Despite her best efforts, Karen had lost control, not just over Jack, but over the entire neighborhood. The community had rallied around Jack's vision of a fun, welcoming environment, and Karen's attempts to restore her power only made her look even more out of touch. The very drones she used to intimidate Jack became the centerpiece of the neighborhood's favorite event, a symbol of how her tactics had backfired spectacularly. And while Karen fumed from the sidelines, Jack continued to innovate. He partnered with local businesses to sponsor community days, offering free swim lessons for kids, fitness classes for adults, and even charity events to support local causes. What had once been a backyard rebellion had transformed into something so much bigger, a thriving community where people felt connected, valued, and free from the pettiness of HOA politics. One day, as Jack relaxed by the pool, watching his kids splash in the lazy river, he spotted Karen standing on the sidewalk, watching the festivities from afar. For a moment, he thought she might try to stir up trouble again, but instead, she turned and walked away, shoulders slumped in defeat. Jack couldn't help but smile. He hadn't just won the battle against Karen, he had changed the entire culture of the neighborhood, and no drone, no rule book, and certainly no bitter HOA queen could ever take that away.